So I guess you can say fields aren't the only thing getting plowed after this week's episode of Chillin' in Another World with level 2 super cheap powers, and yes, don't worry, I'm here all week with these incredible jokes. But in actuality, I did have sorcerers tell me, so you know how last week Hia was observing as our couple was getting down and dirty? Turns out in the source material, she actually was watching as they were actually in the moment. So, what that not only confirms, they did that later on in the night in the anime, but the fact that we got the rings, these guys are gonna have an active life is all I'm saying. And I like that, because they legitimately feel like a couple at this point. But with episode 7, it reinforces a couple of things about this show. Number one, it's simply fun. There's no red flags about it, it's just pure unfiltered fun. 2, that hero who got transformed and now is back into his human form and is thrown in prison needs to stick around for the entirety of this story. I don't care if the light novels run for 50 light novels, he has to survive the entire time. And you wanna know why? He is the Jesse and James of this show from Pokemon. Him and his girl, give them a Meowth. We don't take them seriously. They're not actually going to screw shit up, and when they do, we're just going to body them anyway. It's just pure unfiltered chaos, and I love it. And the fact that he just is going to get continuously more and more pissed off is fantastic. But number 3, and I think is the most important, what I was saying early on is that a lot of sorcerers told me that this wasn't a harem. It was a one-on-one romance, and all the characters that surrounded our boy Flilo would ultimately just be people and connections he would have. This episode really flexes why that's the case. And it's not simply because they're not flirting with him, it's because they all want to have a purpose. They don't just want to rely on his good nature. They want to find, the rent situation, finding their purpose so that, between obviously Fenris and now Hia, there's not a lot for them to do. They're finding their purpose, and it avoids them from feeling like objects or just empty shells there to be pretty eye candy. And that's fantastic. Now, of course, I have full live reactions to all these wonderful episodes over on my Patreon, so if you want to see my full and good thought to this or any of these cheat skill episodes, it's going to be over there exclusively. So, actually a lot happened. So, we had a pretty insane threat at face value with that witch and obviously the hero transformed into a monstrosity. Unfortunately for them, they bumped into the worst people ever. One, she tries fighting our girl Hia, who is immune to magic, so you can't touch her. It's literally, I can't touch this. And I love the idea that just almost immediately after he transforms even bigger into actually a pretty cool design, well animated, well detailed, just immediately is thrown onto his ass. And I love the idea that, because what ended up happening was that she was a spirit kind of trapped in the pedestal where she was trapped into the sword that was in the pedestal. She basically just takes the soul back and swallows it. So it's like, that's just resolved, and the others can be left up for the general people to deal with in terms of the guards. And it's interesting because the princess finally gets in touch with him and is like, hey, we want you to be the hero. I apologize for the disrespect, you deserve so much better. And I'm like, damn, everything's coming up my boy's way. He's got a hot wife, he's got a nice life, but he doesn't want it. At the end of the day, his grand goal is he wants to open up a shop someday and just have a great time. And I think that's actually really respectful, because at the end of the day, if there is trouble, he will fight it. Like, if trouble pops up into his front door, he will deal with it. But he doesn't want to be the hero who has to get tasked with all the political bullshit, because why would he? Especially with how it started off, he now has a purpose with his family and friends. You don't often see characters do that, and I'm sure he will get recruited into certain events. It's just all but guaranteed, whether it's because of his demon best friend or the princess. Things are going to happen that he'll have to get involved with. But the fact that rather than just being like, oh, he has to, it's like, currently, he don't gotta do shit. But I honestly think my favorite part was actually seeing the crew and the idea, because basically they started off funny, where they're like, oh god, what's happening? Before we just left the cooking to Fenris, but now the chores are also going to be done. We're complete deadbeats. At the end of the day, would our boy actually care? No, he would say, you can live here rent-free for the rest of your life. He literally wouldn't care. But they want a purpose. So the idea of, the horse stables, the fields and everything like that. But the idea of wanting to expand obviously doesn't come cheap, but it makes sense, especially given that, there's some really cool designs with the kind of more demonic looking horses, the spiritual ones. They caused a ruckus, but you understand their purpose and the idea of the 30% rent, because how are they going to afford, even though they wanted to, it's a respectful thing, how are they going to afford the expansion? It wasn't going to happen. So this way it gives them that purpose and makes them feel more deep as characters. Because it'd be very easy for an author, even if the author did it, it'd be very easy for the anime to skim over it. Because, you know, you could just make them surface level, basic personality, and the fans are still going to come back for more in terms of the main target demographic. This show said, hey, as cute, wholesome, and maybe even potentially spicy as we could have made these two lovebirds, we also want them to not just be, because there's a lot of characters in that household, so the idea of like wanting to go back to the mage school, you know, the fields, everything like that, I like what they're doing, and there is still that isekai story, there is still the whole hero stuff going on, but our boy doesn't want anything to do with it. He will get roped into stuff, and I think it will be funny to see the difference of how maybe the princess and also his demon lord best friend, who still thinks he's gone, if not dead, you know, will rope him into different things, but I like the fact that he's like, nah, I don't want to, and his goal of just wanting to open a shop is just so in line with what we know of his character as it stands. This was a very enjoyable episode. It's remaining consistent on a production level. I'm honestly surprised because as large as that shitty hero became in terms of his monster form, I'm actually impressed by how good it looked. Granted, they quickly dissolved him and turned him back into a human, but you could have easily made the most disgusting, horrible, out-of-pocket 3D mess possible. And honestly, all I can see from this show is that it must have a pretty decent production schedule because the show has yet to dip visually from what I can remember. And honestly, if Fenris wasn't a part of the show, or Fenris was a worse character than she is, Hia would be like #1 waifu of this show, man. Like, she's just, I love her charm of like how she calls our boy Supreme One. Is like, what are you talking about, Supreme One? You are the Supreme One. Of course I'm gonna call the Supreme. And I'm like, just the fact that she's always just smiling and like, my master's so strong. It's not like she wants to bang our boy, she just wants to worship the ground he walks on. Like, yes, okay, if you and Fenris are gonna have sexy fun times, I want to make sure your thrust game has the right tempo. She would unironically say that with a straight face. Like, second best character in this show, 100%. It's Fenris, then Hia, and unironically that shitty hero, because without that shitty hero, I wouldn't be laughing as much as I am. He's like absolute trash, but he's just perfect for the role he plays. Let me know what you thought down below, because I thought this was an absolutely fantastic episode, and I'm excited to see where the rest of the season is going to go, so let me know your feelings down below, leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're around here, and of course ring that bell so you know if I want to upload more. Like I mentioned, we also have those full live reactions over on my Patreon, and hey, while you're there, I'll also give you a video shoutout. So today, we have Adam Dundorf, David Story, Travis Rains, Athmil, GG78cc, and we also have Cathical, so I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care, and honestly, just pick better companions, because that hero, he's pretty much up Shit's Creek without a paddle, but I hope he never changes. Have a good one.